Hi guys, welcome back to another video where you join me in the home workshop where I've got my Myford lathe. Today we're going to start work on the Z50 frame. So the engine's done and next up is getting this frame ready. So it's a bit of a state, there's a few repairs that are needed, so let's run through those and today's video and get cracking. So the biggest repair needed on this frame is the brake lever. So when I was stripping, I noticed, if you saw my first video, this brake lever did not come off. I heated it, I put a bearing puller on it, I put all sorts of pullers on it. It was glowing red, but it would not budge. It had almost like fused together and it wasn't coming. So I resorted to the last option, which was to cut it off. So you can see here, I've cut it clean and I'm going to machine a new brake pivot for this frame. So that will require the frame cutting here and here, taking out and sliding a new piece in and welding it in. So hence why I'm in the home workshop. So we'll get onto the Myford lathe. We've got some 16mm bar, that's our starting stock, and I'm going to turn that down. In the process as well, we've reamed this brake lever, or it's going to be reamed, so we've got a nice fit on both and a nice dimension to work towards. So that's the main job, and then following that, a few tidy up bits, badge that will come off, some headstock bearings and a good once over before we send it for blasting. Hello all and welcome back to another video on this channel. If you haven't watched before, this is my Honda Z50 restoration series. There's a few parts before this. This is part 4 and we're going to cover the repair of this frame. As mentioned at the start of the video, we're in the home workshop where I have my Super 7 lathe. I've had this for many years now and it's a great tool for these small jobs and just making those little parts that get you out of trouble. It's not the biggest thing and this is probably what I'd say the limit of it. Turning steel on a small machine like this, it takes a lot of time and a lot longer than a bigger machine. But nonetheless, it's a great bit of kit and we can create this brake pin that we need. So let's get into the machining and go over what we're doing and how we're going to make this brake pin. So we've started with our starting stock. We faced one end, as I always do, and then put a centre in the end of it. This allows us to locate our revolving centre, as you saw, and create a supporting point each end. This is really essential for turning longer bits of bar, otherwise you have a lot of stick out and your part will vibrate and you'll get a very chattery cut. Once secured, the process becomes much easier. We can use the quick change gearbox to find the right speeds and feeds for cutting this steel. I'm using a carbide tool insert, which I quite like. They're very forgiving and it takes the risk out of sharpening them and doing it wrong. But you can see we set it up, the gearbox does its stuff, and we just take a few passes, taking that material off. As mentioned, you've got to take really small cuts because it is steel and this is a small hobby maker's lathe. Throughout the process we keep the part lubricated with some oil and we stop and take measurements. I've obviously got the dial indicator, which are an imperial, but it's nice to measure with a set of calipers. But you can see here we test fit that brake pedal. This has been reamed and I'm looking for a reasonably tight fit. I want to pack this with grease and I've got to paint this pin and there will be overspray, so it doesn't have to be completely perfect. Let's take a look at where we are now. So you've seen we've turned up our shaft on the lathe. I actually did one but wasn't happy with the fit, so yep, took my time, went again. You'll notice, anyone who's into their machine sort of lathe work, that actually I'm probably on the limit of what's possible with one of these machines. Steel, small lathe, not huge headstock bearings, you've got to really take your time. But nonetheless, the part is complete, well not complete, the turning's complete. So the first diameter is turned and that fits nicely into our hole like that. So you can see that is what's going to sit on the edge of the bike. Next up we've got to drill a hole in the end, so I'm going to clean both ends up on the lathe just to give a flat surface and then drill a hole for the split pin that locates it all. And then we'll go back up to the proper workshop where we can get this welded out. Back onto the lathe where we can face this part off and prepare for drilling the hole for the split pin. So start by facing it and then I like to break this edge. This is a bit of a dangerous technique, and you can see the way I hold it. I am very particular. If this catches on anything, you do not want your hand in the way. But moving forwards, I like to use a Sharpie and measure out my lengths. Obviously, in the ideal world, I'd have a DRO and be able to use that. But old school for me, Sharpie pen, get the calipers, measure against the frame, as I'm doing here, and then scratch on these lines. And these just give me an idea of where the pin's going to sit in the frame and where my hole needs to be along this shaft. So this is dead handy, and it's a good technique for just marking your lines out. With all these lines marked, I'm ready to drill the hole. Now, we have a pillar drill up in the other workshop, but I thought let's make the most of the home workshop and my mini mill in the corner. It's got a small clamp and I can set this part up. It's not a big hole, and it may take a little longer to get through the metal, but it's not an issue. So, bit of time setting up, just getting our part centered, and then we're ready to drill a hole. You can see this really is a mini mill, so it takes the time to get through this metal, but it's nice and accurate, and it's actually quite fun to use. With that hole drilled, just check that it's all in line, and we're ready to go up to the other workshop. We've now finished up the brake pivot, so we've got a hole in the end for a split pin. So I've picked a split pin size, gone slightly oversized, so that drops in nicely. Yeah, that's all done. We're going to head back up to the workshop, cut this frame up, weld that in, and I'll catch up with you then. Rolling into the workshop with the frame, the table's all clean, and I can get kitted up, ready to smash this job out. I came into this job thinking, yep, it's not going to be too bad. I've got to remove this old pin, but as you'll see, it really was a pain. This frame's obviously Honda, and it's 1978. They clearly built stuff well back then, because it fought me the whole way. We started off by cutting the main pin out, and getting through that, it left 2 stubs on each side. This was a good thing, but in hindsight I may have approached it slightly differently, and right now is where I thought I was going to make the easy win. I thought I would grind this right back and I would be left with a little circle to punch out the centre. Turns out those welds that came on this Honda frame really penetrated well, and this sat in there so strong. So hammering it with things, and look how naive I am. I'm thinking I'm going to smash this out, but in reality I have no hope. Spent a bit of time looking at it, and by a bit of time I mean way too long, and concluded that I was going to attack it with a drill bit. So I drill one hole, and my approach from now was to drill this thing out and see if I can remove it by stepping up in size each time. So yeah, if you look at the frame, obviously I've cut these off here flush, but you can see the inside clear. I've stuck a hole in it. Kind of wish I spent more time putting that in the centre, but from this side, ground fully back, and you can just see there is no clear line where that pin used to sit, so it's not ideal. After a small break, we're back to wrestling this frame, and I'm still at it. I'm grinding away, and I am determined to get this out, and it happens that I managed to grind enough away and get the hole big enough where I can essentially smash this out. So we've knocked the bottom one through, and now the fun job of tackling the other side. So take a bit more time and make sure that's centered, and back in with the drill, and then we just work our way up. So start at 5mm, went to a 6, and then we eventually get onto a step drill. Wow. As you can hear, I am very happy about that, and now we're left with 2 holes that need a little tidy up. So simple hand filing, just taking it away bit by bit until my pin fits lovely. And as you can see here, it was a nice tight fit. Little tap with a hammer, and that sits the whole way home, which is a massive, massive result. Wow, after wrestling that in, it is home. So you can see both sides drilled, slightly oversized, and the new pins in. We've got the hole for the split pin this end, and then there's a little bit protruding on the back edge, which will be an area to weld, and then weld the inside here. So let's set that up. Ye old faithful MIG welder comes out, and I get this unwrapped and set up, always starting by cutting my wire, and then we begin to weld. It was okay to weld. In an ideal world, I'd love to TIG weld it. As you know from my other videos, I'm a big TIG welder at heart, but MIG welding is what came on the frame, and we are going for as original as possible, so MIG welding it is. So, to finish up, we've got to clean up this brake lever. So as mentioned, when I was first trying to pull this off, I had to weld some bits on, so got some little bits to cut off, and then just a general tidy up. There's a few abrasive marks, so we'll clean it up and then stick it with the frame, ready for blasting. Moving on to these last few things. As you saw, the brake lever needs a clean up. Before I tried to get this off, I absolutely mullered it. I welded bits on and did all sorts. So flap wheel, nice 80 grit, and then a 120, and we just give it a good once over, clean all them welds off and get it nice and tidy. Then we move up to the headstock and we centre punch our rivets so we can drill this badge straight off. Now, before I went for blasting, or took this all for blasting, I thought, let's make sure we get everything covered. So these are the footrests and foot pegs. They're like a small assembly with springs, pins, washers and split pins. And this is just what holds your foot pegs together. So I thought, let's get this all blasted, ready for paint, and it's all done in one big hit. So strip these down. You can see very, very rusty. Probably never been apart since the day it came out of the factory. So had to wrestle with it for a bit, but managed to get it sorted. Along with those pegs, you can see we've got a swing arm, we've got a chain guard, and then there's the foot pegs and main stand. So that's all looking very rough, and I'm looking forward to getting this all back as shown here, where it's looking perfectly blasted and completely transformed. This is perfect to start painting. So there was never any intention to plan to record this and put it in this video, but I thought, let's capture these first bit of painting and kind of wrap this frame up so it shows start to finish, the repair, the blasting and the paint. So this is our frame all blasted. We've taped the headstock bearings, it's hung up on cable ties, and it's inside a well covered shed. My first piece of advice to anyone doing this would be, don't do it in a shed. Either get a bigger space or do it outside. It worked really well. There's no wind, no rain, but at the same time it made a huge mess. One of those things, but you live and learn. We start by getting it all acetoned and prepped. We want it to be squeaky clean, so our primer really adheres well to the surface. Primer goes down, it's a zinc primer, and we do quite a few coats and just really thin layers, so nothing runs and it looks really good. Let's take a look at these painted parts and have a run through of what paint we've used and what we've gone for and why. So spinning the camera around, you can see we have all of the parts hanging up. So the frame, foot pegs, swing arm, the under foot carriage where your side stand goes. We've got the chain guard and the brake pedal. All parts are, the final colour we're going for is the gloss black finish. To get to that, we have started with a etch primer. So we went for an etch primer, followed, so 3 coats of etch primer on everything. Everything was blasted before. We've then gone for a gloss black top coat, and to give it a nice shine, we're going to be using a 2K clear lacquer. So this is the proper, this is more industrial grade stuff, so the 2-part stuff. So we'll be masking up for that because that stuff is nasty, but we've got the kind of makeshift spray booth here, but just taking our time with it really. I think it will come out nice. For these black parts you could get powder coat, but for cost to finish I think this actually looks really good. You can see we've got a nice finish on everything. So I think it will come out nice and be a good job for this project. So let's get this 2K lacquer shaken up over here and then get this sprayed up, mask it, or mask myself up, and then start laying down some lacquer, get a real good shine on this. Now I must encourage everyone using 2K lacquer, please mask up. This stuff is really nasty, the finish is awesome, but the main thing is you protect yourself. You can see how cloudy it is in here and you do not want to be breathing this in, so please go ahead and use it, but mask up. We're coming to the end of this video, guys, for the frame restoration. We have got all the parts here hanging, as you've seen me paint and prep and sort. They're all dried and they look really good, so I'm going to show you quickly around them and then I'm going to end the video there. So the last clip's going to be me pulling these down and giving you a quick little taster of what they look like before we get into the next video where we're going to start assembling it. We've got one big job left, which I'm going to touch on now, which is these forks. So the biggest job at the moment is to try and repair this thread. So obviously you have a cup here, this one was missing and the thread looks pretty bad, so that is the next big job for us. But like I say, back to these parts, they are looking absolutely mega. Foot pegs, the frame, side stand, our foot brakes, but they're all looking extremely good. So hope you guys have enjoyed that video and I will see you in the next one. Take it easy and see you there.